Hello, I am the Jake Reel. Welcome back to Bad 90s Mixtapes. This week, we're looking at another distinct trend or movement from the 90s that broke through and put its own stamp on the decade. Techno was a buzzword that we used back in the 90s to refer to basically a certain strain of electronic dance-infused alternative and indie rock. I want to stress that most people who use this word to refer to this type of music used it incorrectly. Techno is actually too big of a genre for me to really cover in one video. If you're looking for a comprehensive overview of that type of music, you probably shouldn't bother watching this video. Unfortunately, I'm not really delving all that deep into house, trance, jungle, drum and bass, happy hardcore, all the real rave stuff. If you are a genre purist, I apologize in advance for that. What I am concerned with is mainly a string of loosely related mainstream singles, which at the time seemed to portend a future direction for rock and pop music that never really materialized. I make this channel to give people who were not there in the 90s an idea of what it would have sounded like to have been there in the 90s. And that, unfortunately, leaves me open to a form of bias, to where I feel that I can only reflect my own experience accurately, and that's why I make these selections that I make. The identifying characteristics of these songs, compared to contemporaneous indie and alternative rock at the time, are as follows. More club and dance-oriented production, less reliance on electric guitar riffs, although they certainly use those when it suits them, heavier beats, more use of samples, glitches, effects, and cuts. More often than not, these were influenced by hip-hop. Very, 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 very repetitive structures. Repetitive, repetitive, and repetitive are the three adjectives I would use to describe those, and very, sometimes minimalist hooks. Overall, a very Anglo-European sensibility to most of this music. Out of 10 of the artists that I'm going to be talking about today, only one of them comes out of the United States, and the rest are all from either France or the UK. Moby. Richard Melville Hall, out of all the figures associated with the techno genre, probably comes the closest to having a distinct image or persona in the public consciousness. A lot of these artists are sort of marked by their anonymity. That's probably partly why it never seems to have become the dominant genre in pop. This is the song Sunspot, a B-side to his 1999 single Body Rock from his breakthrough album Play. This is my favorite Moby song. It's got this really chill vibe and mood on top of this amazing production. It just milks the same one-chord groove for 7 minutes. In fact, I think I'm just going to nod off to this one for a while. Hold on. Welcome back. Air. Air is from Paris and consists of Nicolas Godin and Jean-Benoit Dunkel. This is the song Sexy Boy from their 1998 album Moon Safari. To me, this song is like reminiscent of old soundtrack music, maybe something you'd hear in the opening credits of a sci-fi or spy film. The song also has more structure to it than some of the others. It's got an actual chorus coming up. There's definitely a little bit French pop music vibe in this. The Chemical Brothers. The Chemical Brothers are Tom Rowlands and Ed Simons. They formed in Manchester, UK. This is the song Block Rockin' Beats from their 1997 album Dig Your Own Hole. The Chemical Brothers are more rap influenced, I think, although this sounds like it also brings in some older funk samples and sounds into the mix. This one drum roll that sounds a little bit like it's from Brick House by the Commodores. The main riff reminds me a little of Play That Funky Music by White Cherry. It's kind of a throwback, old school, retro future sounding track. Fatboy Slim. Norman Cook was one of the other leading figures of electronic music in the late 90s out of Bromley, Kent, UK, and he would go on to produce and remix many of the biggest artists of that time. This is Praise You from his 1999 album You've Come a Long Way, Baby. And the video, directed by Spike Jonze, features an early example of a flash mob. Prodigy. The Prodigy were from Essex, UK, and consisted of vocalists Keith Flint and Maxim, and keyboardist producers Liam Howlett and Leroy Thornhill. They came pretty damn close to being the leaders of the big beat movement, with their hit singles, weird attention-grabbing videos, and punked-up fashion victim of a frontman. It seemed like if anybody from this genre was going to stick around for the long term, it'd be them, but within 2 years the pop world had moved on. This is Firestarter from their 1997 album, The Fat of the Land. This band gained a lot of popularity really quickly because it fit alongside a lot more of the alternative rock that had come out before them. It's kind of a little bit easier to embrace them in their image. Daft Punk. Although they didn't reach the height of their commercial success until the 2010s, Daft Punk will always be reminiscent of the 90s techno scene that they emerged from to me. This is their breakout single, Da Funk, from their 1997 debut album, Homework. Hailing from Paris, France, the duo of Guy-Manuel Homem Christo and Thomas Bangalter first worked together in a band called Darling. They got their name for a new band when a music critic described their sound as daft, punky thrash. Personally, I find it a little hard to listen to them for a long time. I don't really hear a lot of variation or meaning in what they do. It does seem to test my patience a little bit after a while, but they're the most successful group on this list by a long shot bar Moby, so as usual, don't listen to me. This video is one of my favorites from the period. It's another one directed by Spike Jonze, and basically about a giant dog man walking around the city and just having these weird run-ins and conversations with people while the song plays in the background. White Town. I unapologetically love this song. I just really like the triplets on the bass drums during the main part. White Town is a solo project by G.O.T. Mishra from England by way of Rourkela, India. This is his song Your Woman from the 1997 album Women in Technology. And this one's a lot more accessible, it's more of a normal pop rock song, but I think it's got enough in common with some of the other songs that it fits alongside them, and it was popular around the same time. Listen to that Darth Vader violin. Apollo 440. Brothers Howard and Trevor Gray and their friend Noko make up the personnel of Apollo 440. By 1999, the whole techno thing was largely starting to fade from the mainstream, but here's a song, Stop the Rock, from their album Getting High on Your Own Supply, that still managed to break through. It's just a really fun, dumb dance song that I've always liked. Honestly, I don't know why this wasn't bigger. I don't know anybody who remembers this besides me. There was certainly worse stuff around at the same time that was more popular. Oh, and these guys borrowed a lot from oldies and classic rock and things like that. You can hear that old school organ keyboard sound in there. Aphex Twin. Unlike most of this list, Richard James never had a hit single or real moment in the mainstream. He was more of an indie darling and absolutely deserves his own video someday. But you can't pretend to be presenting an overview of techno in the 90s without bringing up Aphex Twin. This is the song 4 from 1996's The Richard D. James album, one of the most critically acclaimed releases in the entire genre. You'll hear this production is a bit artier, it's weirder, almost more skeletal and unnerving than other straight-ahead dance stuff. You know, it almost feels like several unrelated songs going on at once, even though it's got this easy-to-follow melody here. And it's just really exploring the possibilities of what you can accomplish with a synthesizer or a drum machine, a turntable, really pushing the genre to its limits. Boards of Canada. This is the song Turquoise Hexagon Sun from their 1998 album Music Has the Right to Children. Another critical slash indie darling, Boards of Canada are a two-piece out of Scotland consisting of Michael Sanderson and Marcus Ewan. It's a spooky, eerie-sounding, almost psychedelic album that falls more on the ambient techno side of the equation. There is almost a droning, minimalist Brian Eno feel to a lot of this. Electronic music, of course, didn't go away after the 90s. If anything, a newer form of it crossed over to newer heights of popularity. But I feel like this specific style of dance song that was structurally more in line with traditional indie or alt-rock, but with more rave or electronic elements added to it, wasn't around for very long. You'll notice most of this stuff was from the last few years of the decade. And not all of these artists went on to have long, successful careers or anything like that. But electronic and dance sounds seemingly wouldn't figure prominently again in a more mainstream rock context until almost the end of the zeros, that is, the first decade of the 2000s. And you still hear bands today sort of trying to recapture this vibe. So the echoes of 90s techno still live on. I am the Jake Whale, and this was Bad 90s Mixtapes. I'll see you sometime in the future.